Hi, I'm Jenny Paxson. I am the Reader's Discovery Librarian here at the Webster Public Library. And this is our Diverse Abilities Dialogues on Motor Development. Next month, we are having one on GI issues. And we're going to be starting those now. Instead of Wednesdays, we'll be doing Tuesdays next month and the following. And we'll be doing that going forward. So look for those, but they are all recorded on and streamed live on YouTube. So if you can't make one, you can always pop onto YouTube and see all of our recordings. So that's really awesome. And also coming up on August 8th, we're going to be having a college and transition fair that we're going to be doing. It's our first we've ever done. We're going to have local colleges for people who are developmentally disabled, different programs, resources in the community for workforce development. It's going to be a really big event. So if you or a loved one needs resources for what's to come after the school bus stops coming, this will be the event for you. And I'm going to have Britt, one of our partners from Parents Helping Parents Coalition of Monroe County, come up and say a little bit about their organization. There you go.
Hi, my name is Brittany Jensick. I am the president of Parents Helping Parents Coalition of Monroe County. We are an advocacy organization that helps families navigate some of those early challenges of suspecting delays or disabilities, receiving diagnoses, seeking evals, and then putting supports in place, whether that's therapies or trying to hook them up with the right doctors, helping with school systems, whatever that involves. We try to be there for the families. We have an event coming up in June 14th, a Sunday, 10 to 12 at Challenger Miracle Field. It's a play date. It's free. We just have families meeting other families, and our entire goal is to build that village so that nobody has to feel alone on this journey. Today we have PTs and OTs here to talk about motor development. We are going to let them introduce themselves and then tell us a little bit about why they got into the field, what they love about their job, what they do, whatever they feel like kind of introducing themselves, and then we will ask them some questions and open it up to the audience for questions.
So if you want to start. Hi, I'm Amy Pete. I'm a pediatric physical therapist. Currently, my full-time job is teaching in the physical therapy department at Nazareth University, but I also work half day a week, have for a long time in the motor developmental clinic at the University of Rochester Medical Center. I have been a pediatric PT in all different kinds of settings. I've been in a hospital, I've done home care through a hospital, I've done early intervention and preschool and outpatient. The only place I have not worked is in a school. I love my job. I think it is wonderful to be able to work with little people and their families and help them learn how to use their bodies and how to navigate their environment and how to promote their independence.
Hi, I'm Felicia Thera. I'm an occupational therapist. Like Amy, I've done everything. So doing pediatrics, and I currently now work for Autism Up and have full-time. I've always worked part-time for them and gone full-time, and I also work for Room to Bloom still. And I don't know what other profession I would go into. People say you're drawn to it, and you just are drawn to it, and there's nothing else that I would like to do or do. So I never plan on retiring. Probably all of us are the same in some capacity, shape, or form. And I love now, kind of like you with teaching, I get to teach the young ones coming in that work there. And we've had so many individuals, PTs, go into OT, which I am so happy for. And it's exciting. It's exciting to see that and the next generation coming up and helping our clients.
I'm Janet Rosenberg. I am a physical therapist. And I work for Step by Step Sprout.
Yeah.
Right, yes. And I have done a lot of different things. I worked with adults initially when I got out of school, but I always knew that I was going to work with children. And I was exposed to physical therapy. I had a cousin who was born in the mid to late 60s, did not breathe for the first 5 minutes, and was diagnosed with cerebral palsy. And at that time, did not get any therapy till he started kindergarten when he was 5.5 years old. So I was in high school and started volunteering at Mary Carriola, and that is how I got introduced to the world of PT and OT. And I enjoy working with all ages, but my heart is really with the babies and the children, because I don't ever want families to go through what my aunt and uncle went through.
I'm Amanda Wilbur. I'm an occupational therapist. I've been doing this for about 15 years now. I'm also the director at Step by Step / Sprout Therapy Group of Rochester. I think I like OT because we do a lot of out of the box kind of thinking. It's not always A plus B equals C. And so it's that problem solving and just working so closely with families. We've seen so many kids achieve a lot of things with support, and so early intervention has just been really special to me, and I hope that I can continue to do the things that we love to do.
For the listeners out there, can somebody give just a quick explanation what the difference is between an OT and a PT? You know, the whole panel is motor development, but I think sometimes people confuse the two or don't quite understand the difference between the two.
You want to go? I'll
No,
piggyback
go
on you.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, you know, again, I've been doing this since the days of black and white, and it was always said that the OT does the upper body and PT does the lower body, which is not true. The nature of OT, as it came out to be, is function. We started with working with individuals that were in war to work on getting their hands back to function, and that function has continued. However, it's kind of morphed, and we're very, not that PTs aren't holistic, but we are very holistic. We look at everything. We look at the eyes, we look at the vestibular system, and there's a lot of overlap, but we take that in and look at that function of your daily life. And that function of your daily life can be anything from me sitting here and holding my body up against gravity so I don't fall down. Anything to add to that? Or, you know,
Yeah, and I think just for parents, right, OT can look like the fine motor play of like putting coins in a piggy bank, or it could look like using a spoon to feed yourself. It could look like dressing skills. We cover a lot of areas of development, but it's that holistic view that I think kind of sets OT apart, is that we have some mental health training, we have sensory training, we have motor development, we have behavioral training. We're really a whole encompassing discipline.
what I kind of tell everybody is that we're in everybody's business because we pretty much get into PT, we pretty much get into speech, we pretty much get into special ed, we get into some psych, because that's a big part of our background is psych, and that piece of that functionality. So yeah, we're in everybody's business, and I have to say that people are surprised when they say, "Oh, OT does that? Oh, you guys do that? Oh," and then they're like, "Okay, let's bring that OT in," you know. Not to say that our PT, it works together, and that's how it has to be. It's a team no matter what.
And I'll just piggyback on that, because like the majority of the population I work with is really birth to 3. And oftentimes I am the first provider that comes in. So I do feel like I'm a jack of all trades. And I do feel that there, you know, we are definitely working on vision, because vision leads movement. And movement is, you need movement for developmental progression. And so we're looking at how to use what's available in the home through play and music and language to facilitate growth in all areas of development.
That was perfect.
I know I am lucky enough that I have worked with some of these providers. One of the things that Janet said to me way back when that just struck me as that I've never ever forgotten was that movement is the way in which a child can explore their environment in order to develop other areas of need. A PT often is the first provider in the home. One of the questions we get asked all the time is, how do I know when to request an eval? How do I know when my child needs and what different services a child might need? Why is it, Janet, that you think, and Amy, I guess, that you think that you are the first provider? Is it because those motor differences, are obvious sooner? What advice would you give a parent when they're concerned and questioning whether or not they should pursue an eval or their child needs services?
Do you want me to?
You go.
Okay.
I'd answered the last one. We'll share.
You're so nice up here. So I do think that PT is often the first one in because I think those motor delays are often apparent first, especially the development of head control, right? So that's the beginning, babies develop head to toe, and I think that that's one of the first things that parents notice is if they're not developing head and trunk control, because that's really behind your visual system orienting the head to midline. And we see that first, right? Language delays don't show up until quite later because those milestones start later, and those gross motor milestones start first, and we expect them first, then the fine motor and the speech and things like that. So I do think that those are seen first, and that's why we're there first. And that's in early intervention especially, we need to be very good at identifying those other areas because we are usually the first ones in there. I do think that the new CDC guidelines as far as how they modified the ages at which different milestones are expected, so that I think before it was always the 50th percentile. So, children are supposed to sit at 6 months, and so we're not expecting children to do things at a different age, but the way that those have been set is that they're at the 75th percentile now. So if the CDC guidelines, I don't have them memorized, but you can look them up, if your child isn't sitting by the age that they say they should be sitting, that's a good time to talk to your pediatrician about that. And that's why they changed those. I know I was at the beginning when they changed I was like, what? They're changing. But now that I understand why, and it's making it easier for pediatricians and easier for parents, so that if your child isn't hitting that milestone in any of the domains by that age, then it's a pretty good chance that there may have a delay and there may be an issue, and so that's a good time to talk to the pediatrician at that time, I would say.
Yeah, I will just kind of piggyback on that too, is that your pediatricians are phenomenal, but they really are medical specialists, and so they have a limited amount of time to go over developmental concerns or other non-medical concerns. So if you are ever feeling like, man, feeding's not going great for my kid, or I'm really worried that they're not speaking yet, the therapists in early intervention and the preschool program and school programs, we are developmental specialists. We probably know more about development than most other people. So even if you have that inkling of this just is a little bit worrying to me, having an evaluation is a great step. You can just get the information, and we're looking at all developmental areas. It's not like we're only looking at one specific skill. And most of the time, those evaluations are also saying, if this area is a concern, here are some things you can do about it, because your child learns the best from you. So I would just say parents really are the drivers. Your pediatrician is there to support you. They're going to check in on your milestones, but they have a limited amount of time to cover development. So the people in these programs are really the go-to.
Right, so if you have a concern, You don't necessarily need your pediatrician to give you permission to reach out for, whether it's an outpatient evaluation or seeking a call through early intervention to see if your child is eligible. And always go with your gut, right? You know your child best as a parent.
I was just going to say that. Go with your gut. You know, as mothers, we have instinct, and we
Yeah.
know, and especially if you have other kids, you know that there's something. And, you know, sometimes we do hear it's just a boy, or it's, you know, and as valid as some of that may be, go with your gut, because you know what.
Agree, and I mean, I'll also, like, not as, I didn't grow up on social media and access to all the information that's out there. And I know it's used and it's very, very beneficial, but if your gut is still telling you, regardless of what other moms are saying, that, you know, there's just something not right, go with your gut.
Yeah,
Yes.
and also if the dots aren't aligning, you know, if you have, and the dots go, and it's just something's not right, you know, check it out, because the worst that could be is there's nothing, and then
Right.
you've at least taken that step.
And you will get a lot of tools and information and suggestions for how to vary your play or activity at home. So, yeah.
Can one of the OTs speak to, you know, most people think in terms of OT with fine motor. Can you speak to kind of the sensory piece? And then, I guess, listening to what you guys just said about going with your gut, you know, I would assume that that also needs to be done for sensory issues. But sensory is interesting because you don't see developmental milestones, you know, in the CDC chart for sensory issues. So what are some things that parents could look for, or that might be a little concerning, that might raise red flags and kind of prompt them to have that gut feeling that they need to check into things a little bit?
I'll let you start this time.
Yeah, okay, so sensory processing is your brain taking in information from your environment, and your brain decides a response based on that information. So everybody sitting here, your brain is taking in information on where your clothes are touching your body. Some of us have like an itchy tag and we're like bothered by it, and some people don't notice, right? So that applies to several sensory areas. So we look at movement, touch, auditory, taste, smell, and vision, and a fancy one is called proprioception, which is your body awareness. And then another one is called interoception, which is the internal awareness of things going on in your body. Like if you have to go to the bathroom, that's your interoception. So there's lots of those sensory areas, and generally we look at kids who are sensitive, seeking, which means they need a lot of it, or kids who don't really actively seek out that information. And it's a little bit more complicated than that, but just to give some general ideas, there's either really sensitive, and you can be a mix of things. You can be sensitive in one area, seeking in another area. And that's kind of what OTs help tease out and figure out how those sensory processing skills are affecting your function. Are they affecting attention, play, feeding, sleep, anything else?
Yeah, I'll just piggyback a little bit on that too, is sensory comes from also the movement or lack thereof. And there's a lot of different reasons that we don't have that. And a lot of individuals need to feel safe and grounded. And we're seeking that, and our nervous system, we can end up being in flight or fight most of the time because we're worried about being grounded and being safe, that we can't take in any other stuff. So that's going to affect everything. And like Amanda said, you can be hypersensitive or hyposensitive, when really the main thing that everybody's trying to do is be grounded and feel safe. And that movement that you were talking about, that vestibular, which is a big buzzword, and getting that input and getting that feeling of how your body's going to react, once we all feel safe, once we all feel comfortable, then other stuff can come in. And we've all been there. And just an example is if you get pulled over. If we got pulled over this morning by a cop car and we got a ticket and the lights went on and everything, you might not be feeling grounded at that point. So I'm not going to be paying attention, and all the other information, my body's not receiving it as it should. So that's kind of where we come from. And that, and you know, when you talked about OT and PT and the difference, there is a lot of overlap at the beginning, because you can't get your job done with moving and all that unless we get that sensory. It's just a natural thing for everybody. And so how it affects your life and how it affects how you function is when there's an issue, because believe it or not, we all have sensory issues. And we learned how to cope with them and how to do stuff, but we also know when I need 5 minutes. You know, you come home from work before you play with the kids, let me take my stuff off, let me relax, get my drink. Now we're ready to go.
I know that such a big part of therapy is individualizing the programming, or, you know, kind of the methods. But if you have a child that's, so we get questions all the time that my child bites everybody and everything, my child got kicked out of daycare, my child, if you have a sensory seeker, is there something that parents, you know, that you start with, or that is your, I guess, kind of, you know, 2-second recommendation for like a sensory seeker and then a sensory avoidant? And I guess I kind of have the same question for the PTs. Is there something that you would recommend that parents who are really kind of suspecting delays but don't yet have therapies in place can work on with their kids to encourage motor development and sensory integration?
So that's a tricky question, because when I look at biting, I don't just say that a child is biting. We all know, we can all attest to behavior as something, and what that behavior is. Now, I need to know, if I'm looking at that individual, are they non-speaking?
Right.
Are they, you know, what is somebody getting in their space? Are they reacting to something? So there's so much more to figure out, and that's why sensory it's not tangible. It's not like you broke your arm, you put it in a cast, and 2 weeks later, if you can move, then you don't need therapy. But if you can't, then you get therapy. You know, it's not that. And it is individual. Because if we polled everybody here and we all did the same thing, it would be different. And our reactions would be different. You know, and you could look at the internet, and I think it's wonderful, but there's a lot of information that is not giving the whole thing. For example, vibration boards, I don't know how you all feel about that. I think vibration boards are wonderful when used properly. You have to make sure you have the right stuff to go on. So it would be more of, you can try the basic stuff, such as vibration in the mouth or chewy stuff, but we really need to know what. I kind of like that. But we need to figure out what is going on, because you might be just throwing stuff to the wall too. You guys?
No, but I'm just thinking, like, in a very general
Yeah.
sense, because I work primarily in the home, so each home is its own oasis,
Yes.
right? And some homes have lots of things in them that can be overwhelming, and some homes don't, or there can be a lot of noise that is naturally in the, either in the home or in the outside environment. So just, I'm saying those because those are examples of the individuality of trying to piece things or pull things together or apart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny because it looks like we play, and I think a really good therapist makes it look fun and play.
Yeah.
But there's so much more that goes into
Right.
it.
Right. Yes.
And I think we talked about this a little bit, but what does an evaluation kind of look like for, because parents, I think that sounds very scary to a lot of people before they get into, you know, when they're like curious oh, these things aren't going the way I think they're going with my kid, but then you hear the word evaluation, it kind of is scary. So what does that look like for PT and OT, if you want to start?
Are we
for
talking about
PT?
like early intervention?
Yeah, or, maybe even at because, maybe they aren't addressing it until they're 3 or 4, or when they're going into school district or whatever. It depends on whatever way you want to see that question, so
Do you
go ahead.
want to talk, like for PT, do you want to talk about the early intervention part and then? can
Sure, I
after
haven't
that?
done an evaluation in a number of years, but I can tell you that, I guess prior to COVID, we'll put it that way, we would go into somebody's home and really just honestly sit on the floor and if it's a baby, the baby might be lying on a blanket and there might be toys around, or maybe mom's holding the baby, and that's okay too. We're going to just, we're going to do our evaluation really at the comfort of the parents that are there. And ideally, we do want to get down to the floor. We might have them get their children down to their diapers so that we can really take a look and see what the whole body looks like, what their spine looks like. We're looking for symmetry and how they move, how they react to the movement of toys around them, whether they can move to toys. And then if they're more active, then we're going to use toys to encourage movement and see what they do and how they move from like on their back to on their stomach, for example, or if they can get up to sitting, how they do that, or even potentially pull up to stand. So that would be, in a really quick nutshell, like an infant kind. I will say, every time I go into somebody's home, though, my evaluation eyes are always on. And it is a lot of observation and using what's around the home to promote movement, but always we start with, how did the week go? What are you noticing? What are you doing differently from what we talked about last week, and what are your concerns? And then we go from there.
And I think in other settings, or in that same setting, as PTs, we're really looking at the joints and the, the arms and legs and spine and trunk and head, and how are those muscles working and how is that body working. But we really start with, we always partner with families, and, what are the family's concerns? If the child's old enough to tell us, what are they thinking and what are their concerns? And we tailor, there's so many things we can do, we really tailor it to what the specifics are. But as PTs in general, we're looking at how are those joints moving, how far can they move, how far can the child move them, how much can they move them, what is the child's strength, how is their head control, again, is there symmetry, is their spine straight, are their arms and legs the same on both sides, and then how are they using their body functionally to get around, to sit up, to move. And then we, as we were gathering information, both from what we're told and then what we're seeing, trying to narrow it down. If we're wondering about a delay and we're thinking about, qualifying for early intervention or preschool services, we will do, a standardized test, which, it's not a paper and pencil and bubble sheets, but, it's usually observing a child, facilitating certain movements, and we can score those to see where does that child fall compared to their peers who are their same age. So we can give some data about, is this child delayed or are they not? Are they a little bit delayed? Are they a lot delayed? But that's a part of what we're doing, but that gives us data so that they can get the free services that are provided by the county and the school districts when they're little in that way.
I was just thinking that for occupational therapy, I think it should look and feel play-like for your child. It shouldn't be, I think it's for parents, it's more stressful, but we're just kind of presenting them with toys and seeing what they play with and what they gravitate towards and what they don't gravitate to. And then in general, sensory tends to be more of a parent questionnaire at this age. It's more like, how's your child doing with movement, touch, taste, smell, all those things. So it should feel okay, like more anxiety provoking to parents, maybe not so much to your child. Your child should feel like, okay, these people are just here to play with me.
I think it also you have to look into the context of where the eval is taking place. So home is different than clinic, and again, depending on the child or the individual, how they're going to react in that certain situation, and how, sometimes how does the parents react? Because sometimes the parents, if their child is just exploring, it's like, please don't do that. But we want to see that. We want to see everything, because that's your observation, and that's where we can kind of say, okay, this looks like this looks like that. And for infants too, I think one of the big things too is localization. Localization to sound, localization to just being able to look and being aware of surroundings, and how do we move our feet? How do we move our arms? Are we able to know where our feet are? And, this all is encompassing, and that's, and I love it because we can all do that together. And then, if the PT goes in first, it's like, okay, here's what I saw, and always 4 eyes are better when you have that to see what's going on, because you can then really see all the other stuff.
You made me laugh with the exploring thing, because my daughter, whenever she goes into an appointment, she just immediately goes to throwing every piece of something in the entire room and destroying the entire office, and I'm just like watching this whirlwind go through. But that was part of my question, is like, what do you do with a client or patient or person that you're working with who is just really not interested in participating? And like, how long, like, I've brought my daughter to many appointments over and over again, and she really just doesn't want to be there. And it's like, how do you engage with the client? But also, like, when do you know, I don't know, like, is there a point when you have to tell the parent, hey, sorry, maybe they need to start at a different time or do something different? I don't know.
So I'll just start by saying there's a lot of factors that go into that. Sometimes it might just be the time of day. So it might be that maybe the little one that I'm going to see literally just woke up, hasn't had breakfast. The last thing they want is me, right? And sometimes, like, it might even take some time to weed that information out from our parents. So it's, it's just...
For me, I don't know how anybody else feels. If they came into my clinic and was throwing things around, that's fine, because that gives me a lot of information right there. That gives me information, and I can go off of that. And then, for me, again, I might start throwing things back. Not back at them, but back, this is the play, this is the reciprocity, this is to see. I might then roll a ball, or, but it depends, and it depends on that. I don't like the word behavior. I really don't, because it comes from somewhere. And there's things that we glean and we learn. And if we look at ourselves, we're no different. And then I think that's where we have to look at, to Janet's point, yes, there are some days that it's just not going to happen. There are some days you can always get something, but there are some days that it just doesn't occur. And you can try to change the environment and make it play, but there's sometimes that it can't, and then you figure out what you're going to do as a plan. But that, to me, I love that, because the throwing, because that tells me so much. And I know that there's ways that you can get in, but it's about playing. And I think as a therapist, it's also, it doesn't make a difference how old you are or what you do. You're still on the floor playing and rolling and singing. And there are ways, I would say more times than not, you can get stuff done. But there are times that you just can't. But you have to be willing to take yourself out of it and just go with it.
Yes. I can think of times when maybe the little one goes under a table.
Oh, yes.
And if I'm welcome, I go under the table too.
Sure.
And maybe we both just lie on our backs and we hang out there. And we adapt and go from there,
Yeah.
right?
I mean,
Music is also like key. That sometimes just singing a song or singing a song to what we're going to do just changes things up and
Yeah.
kind of go from there.
And even light, like
Yeah.
but take a flashlight, go under there, I mean, your assessment is what you're gonna get anyway. Even though it's standardized, half the time you can't get that standardization, so it's what you're looking for.
I do think, I completely agree with the littles, like, with the littler guys, that you just have to stick with them
Yes.
always and forever. But I've also had the other point of working in outpatient, where sometimes with the older kids where we get that difference between what the parents and family want for their child and what their child wants for themselves. And so I always would initiate that conversation, when the child just they're coming and their parents are paying their co-payments and they're coming and working on something that child really doesn't want to work on once they're older. And so having that conversation about like, what is it that you want, and if the child's able to tell us, which they're often able to tell us in some way, and I think it's on us for sure to try every possible angle we can, but sometimes we do get to a point where we're like, right now, they're not interested. And in order for all of us to, with therapy, it's not a passive thing. The person, whether it's a grown-up or a kid, needs to be involved and active participant in some way. I think we have to try really, really, really hard for a long time. But there are kids that I've worked with, they're like, I don't want to do this, and they're telling us in one way or the other. And so then we have that conversation about, which we all, I think, as parents, who have children my children are young adults now, that sometimes there are things that I wanted for them that they did not want for themselves. And so we had that conversation. That happens for kids with disabilities as well. And so sometimes it's just not the right time. And maybe we'll come back to it again if it's totally, that wall is up and there's resistance. It just doesn't work. So sometimes we do have to give up. Littles, we keep working hard. But they get that autonomy as they get older, and that's okay. And I think those conversations are really important for families and kids to be able to express what it is that they each want.
A good point. It's presumed competence. And we can't talk at the individual. We have to talk to, and you have to let the individual know what you're doing. And again, they telling you in a certain way, and if you don't listen the first time or the second time, you're going to get that biting. You're going to get that. So, yes. But you also know that it's just that experience of knowing that too. And sometimes it's, the parent wants the information and there's been times where it's like, let's hold off, and it's like, no, we have to know, but we're not going to, it's going to be a battle.
Yeah, I'm just gonna end that piece with, I think, right, as a parent, it's hard to see your kid go through therapy. But like hiding almost like why you're going to see somebody is not helpful either, right? So I've had many parents be like, can I tell you all of this not in front of them? And that's tricky because then we're like hiding what's happening, right? And it's part of that, like you have to be part of this team when you're older. And it's not a bad thing to have therapy. We make so many changes in so many kids' lives that really having therapy should be a positive, whether it's mental health, physical, occupational therapy.
Yeah. And therapy in and of itself is hard because you're getting uncomfortable. And as an individual, you're doing things that are scary and that you're not being able to do. And here's, somebody coming in and a stranger. And that also is rapport, which is your first, second, third visit. And if you don't have that, there's nothing that's going to happen. So therapy kind of looks different depending on the child from the first time to the fourth time.
Right. And even during a session.
100%, yeah.
Yes.
It's always led by that.
Yes.
But,
Adapting, yeah.
and we're all seasoned here, to know that
Yeah.
give and take. It's a dance.
Yeah.
It's
It
a
is a
dance.
dance.
It's a dance, and you're not going to step on somebody's foot. Sometimes you may get their toes, and then you back up and you go again. But you have to get that rapport, and you got to get that trust, that safety. It all goes back to that safety.
Yeah.
No parent wants to need therapies, I guess. But are there any automatic qualifiers? Like for a baby that's born, are there any automatic qualifiers these
There's
days?
a long list of automatic qualifiers.
Are there
Even,
common ones that parents should be aware of?
like, very low birth weight tends to be a very common one. So if you had a very premature child, there are some specific weight limitations to what an automatic qualifier is. Usually not medical diagnoses. So like actually an injury to your brachial plexus, that's a medical diagnosis, and that's not an automatic qualifier for developmental diagnosis. So there's a long list of them that everybody in the county goes by because they're state regulated.
Is that posted anywhere that parents could look at?
Yep, yeah, for sure, on the Bureau of Early Intervention website.
It seems as if all of the therapies are so interconnected. Is there a benefit to a parent just asking for a full eval if, rather than, my child's not holding their head up and so therefore I want a PT eval? And does the parent have the option to make that call?
A parent can call early intervention directly in Monroe County, actually throughout New York State. And it's called, again, it's been a little while, so correct me. Typically what happens, you would call Monroe County, there would be a contact person that would assign that child to a service coordinator with Monroe County. That person calls the family and they get some basic information. And based on that information, they determine that, yes, your child would be eligible to have what's called a core eval. And that evaluation consists of two team people. If motor is a concern, then it would be an OT or a physical therapist, and then a teacher or a speech pathologist. So there's always, as you said, 4 eyes looking at a child, and they're looking at a variety of developmental skills, social, cognition, motor, language, self-help.
I think the problem, though, and I don't know if you guys have, and it's not a problem, but it's something, if you're in the middle of those milestones of getting that done, and you get an eval, and it's not that it has to be, and that's where the child usually, they'll look back at the guidelines and say, oh, nope, there are times that we know, and we, early intervention has changed so much.
Yes,
So
yes.
back in the day, if we said it, it was.
Yes, yes.
But it's a little bit harder now, so it's hard. When you get those evals, you want to make sure you're on either end of that.
Yes, yes, and there are also clinical clues.
Yes.
That a provider can use.
Yes.
Say you use a standardized test and the numbers are not immediately determining eligibility, but the providers that are doing the evaluation still have concerns based on maybe how the child is moving or not moving, or how they're visually taking in their environment. And so there's a list of clinical clues that you can use in addition to the testing that could help build a case for eligibility for early intervention services.
There is a provider shortage. There is a wait list through early intervention. Can you guys talk about some of the community resources that are available for PT and OT options for families if they were to go through insurance or private pay outside of the county system?
Yeah, so there are several companies within Monroe County that have an insurance-based outpatient clinic. And really, to qualify for those services, it depends on if we take your insurance, and often insurance wants to see functional impact on your skills, so it can't kind of just be like, oh, I have a sensory kid and they just want to use the gym. It has to be like, how is that impacting your community life or daily life? And so it still has to be like a measurable outcome of like, we're not just here to provide support for no reason. It has to be based on something. So for physical therapy, occupational therapy, and speech therapy, most of the time, your specific insurance plan will kind of dictate what your coverage looks like for, I usually say habilitative care for these kids. Habilitative is like we're teaching them new skills. Insurance typically covers when somebody has an injury and needs PT, but we're looking at the other side of building skills. So calling your insurance company is really the best way to figure out what your coverage is, who's in network for you, and how to kind of access those services, or is there a limit on those services? Do you have a copay? There's a lot of pieces to the insurance side of things. For a free resource, I always have people go to the Parents Helping Parents Connection website, because we have had a lot of panelists talk about motor development, feeding development, speech development. I have the Webster Library as a resource because of all the panels that are free to anybody really with internet connection can access those things. So there's ways to do it if you don't have insurance. It just may not be one-on-one in person the way you would like them to be.
I will also say, just plugging where I work, Autism Up, we have family navigators. And so they can help you. There's family navigators for each phase, if you will, for 0 to 5, 5 to 7, and onward. And so they can also supply you with the resources that are needed. And you just call and somebody will get back to you and help you navigate that as well.
Can you, for Step by Step / Sprout and Autism Up and URMC and Nazareth, can you guys talk a little bit about the therapies that, or the services, the therapies, the programs, any of the above that are offered at your places?
Yeah, I'll go first. So Step by Step / Sprout, we have outpatient physical therapy, occupational therapy, and speech therapy. We have seen people from 0 to, I saw a 35-year-old woman. As long as we accept your insurance, we can see a gamut, and we're hoping to bring some just different therapy strategies in the next couple of months to try to support kids a little bit differently than what's had in this area. But generally, if we don't take your insurance, we don't want to see people forever for private pay. It's just not fair to kids, and so we try to have really short outcomes and support the parent to figure out how to access something else after us or in conjunction with us. So we're not holding all the answers. We want to support parents and have them be a part of our therapy sessions.
So Autism Up is a little bit different. We don't only see individuals with autism. We see individuals with any type of disability. And so for the past 20 years, I've been running a class called Exploring Sensations, and that starts at 3 years old. That's the youngest as of now. We're still in the works of trying to get some other stuff to go, but we're a nonprofit, and we're basically self-direction is what really drives our revenue. So it's hard because that has since changed, self-direction. So we see kids from 3 years old, and there's not that much at this point. For 3-year-olds, it would be a movement class, a movement-based class. We then move on to the next steps, which is 5 years old, which is like a boys zone or an arts. And then, so we have programming really from 3, it could go up to 60. We also have another component, which is FLA, which is Full Life Academy, and that is for those individuals that graduate high school, and then what do you do? So it is an academy, and we are working on, there's a lot of restructuring going on, that we are looking to do 3 academies. We are looking to do a Littles Academy, middle, and then an older. So hopefully that will be in the works soon. very much so. It's very much needed. And we are, as an OT there, I function as an OT because it's just inbred in me, but I cannot say I'm an OT when I'm doing stuff because of payment and self-direction. However, we still provide, it's play-based, it's more recreational, but it's learning. And it's learning either on one-on-one groups, it's learning then taking that and moving on to being in a social skills with more than just one. I also have a movement group for 18 and over now. We just did that. I have a vision group. Some things are covered, some things are not covered. So we have a calendar of, I don't even know how many classes we offer now between full life and programming, but we are looking to make it from the littles all the way up because we know there's a waiting list, because we know there's that, and because we know we can use, we also have music and movement and doing all that stuff. So I know I sound like I'm really purporting this, but I am. It's such a great organization, and I've been with them for 20 years, so, and have grown, really. And we also offer bike camps for those that need to learn how to, so we have all these extras, and now we have an amazing sports program and swimming program that does 5 and up, and it's, we're out at JCC swimming, we're out playing golf, so it's from to adulthood. We have 60-year-olds and cooking. We have a wonderful cooking program, sorry.
Oh, no, it's awesome.
You are all invited anytime you want. And, you know, we are looking at also, you know, maybe doing some working with other agencies and seeing what we can do. So, yeah.
So through my 2 different hats, so URMC, so the place I work, so I work in the developmental clinic, so if anyone has an appointment at the developmental clinic, I'm the motor developmental clinic, I am there and can see anybody at any time. We have OT and PT and speech who are there to support the providers. And as far as outpatient goes, which I no longer work, but still in contact with those who do, there's through insurance, and they accept all insurance plans through U of R, so that would be for outpatient services for PT and OT. Speech is in a different department. I'm not exactly sure what they do, but PT and OT are together for that episodic care. So you have a goal, you know, you work towards achieving that goal because, again, insurance needs to see progress. We do see a lot of people in outpatient, the kids who are waiting for early intervention, and that's a great way to, I'm on the wait list, I can get myself to clinic, I can pay my co-payment to provide those services, because sometimes it is a long wait for sure. My other hat, so through Nazareth, we don't have a PT clinic for children. I wish we did, but we do not. But there are pro bono free services through OT, through speech, through music and art therapy for community members. And you can just call, I would just Google it and see on the Nazareth website. You can, usually they have a wait list. But it is a great resource. There are lots of kids coming in and out of the building all the time to participate in those free services, which would be usually an adjunct to do whatever other therapies they're getting, but it could be individual as
And
well.
you just reminded me, we have parent meetups. We have, and that's actually through Family Navigation. We also have grandparent groups. So there's so many different things that we have and free resources that we have.
Do any of, just a quick question, but do any of your organizations have feeding therapy?
Step by Step does. We have a therapist who specifically works with the infant breast bottle, also like medical feeding. She's had older kids with Down syndrome come in, or kids with feeding tubes that are still on it, and so she has a great, and cerebral palsy, right? She has a great medical knowledge of feeding, and is very functional in her approach, so we're not like forcing kids to eat things, and she's trying to show them how to eat naturally through the things that they would be doing and eating. So then as we get older kids, we tend to do more OT side of feeding to see if there's a sensory component to impacting feeding. I, as an OT, feel so strongly that so much of the feeding for older kids is about emotional regulation, and parents impacting like that navigation of having all of your kids, of coming home at the end of the night, right? Like dinner time's the most stressful. So I think feeding for older kids looks a little bit different than you would expect because we're not going to make changes in our clinic really. We're going to make changes at home and see how that kiddo works with you at home. So I always give parents some free resources for feeding so they can hear other people talk about feeding as well.
And U of R also does have feeding through OT and speech, depending on which would be most appropriate.
First, I want to thank you so much. Your breadth and your depth of knowledge is very impressive. I have a 3.5-year-old grandson who is in EI. He's had all the evaluations and everything. His most significant thing is his speech delay. He has maybe 25 words. And he goes to Bright Start in Fairport. I live in Fairport, my daughter and her husband and their 2 children. He has a 8-month-old younger sister. He goes to Bright Start. My biggest challenge, I wrote those because I wanted to remember, I didn't want to talk too long, but I've been very impressed with all the providers. What you guys do is phenomenal. He is on the wait list to get evaluated at Golisano Pediatric and Behavioral. I'm looking for any advice. Like my daughter calls periodically, like, we're still on the list, we're still on the list. It's like 6 to 9 months,
There are,
which developmentally, he's losing so much more time.
there are other providers that do that. There are
Okay.
other providers that do and take insurance.
Well, yeah, he's doing a couple other things. So he
To-
has,
They do evaluations for autism and for,
Okay.
at other,
well, he's getting speech twice a week. He goes to Bright Start 3 times a week. They did an OT evaluation and they said that there was delays. He's on the list for an OT person that we're waiting. Again, we've been waiting a couple months for him to get an assignment for that. And the preschool that he would start in the fall, he actually just got accepted into. I'm so thrilled. We went and toured the Golisano Autism Behavioral. Oh my God, it's like the Cadillac of,
Yeah.
oh my God. So we're like so thrilled that he's gonna start there in the fall, 5 days a week. and
Happiness
every
House?
2:30.
Happiness House?
Yes.
Yep, mhm,
Yes. So I assume you guys, that's a great
That's,
thing.
so
right?
on the other side of my building, that's what that is. So
Okay.
Room to Bloom is a developmental group, and then Happiness House is on the, so we have an
Yeah, we
educational
saw
side.
the room. We went in and he played.
Yep,
and
Yeah.
We
yep.
saw the PC
So-
room and everything.
And Autism Up is just behind those doors on the
Okay.
other side.
The other thing we're doing, everyone that has evaluated him has said they do not see signs necessarily of him being on the spectrum, but his speech, he's had speech for almost a year now, and his progress has been extremely slow. And they're scratching their heads, everyone is. They actually, the speech therapist recommended, and I actually knew of him for other reasons, Brian Harrison, doing an evaluation of him. I assume you guys, that would
He's
be a
in
great thing to
Pittsburgh.
do.
He's in Pittsburgh.
Yeah,
He's-
my
he-
daughter actually has an appointment, her
Yep.
first appointment with them next week.
He's one of the providers, yeah.
So those are all good things, right? You don't have any other advice in terms of trying to move things along?
I would say just, make sure that she's on the wait list, because there are cancellations all the time. But I would say that it sounds like very rarely, when children have all the therapy, so it sounds like, your family is doing all the right things. It's very rare that a child comes in and there's a diagnosis made, or there's, with the physicians, that changes.
What you're doing.
Right, it's the kids who aren't getting therapy and we're waiting on that appointment to get the therapy that I worry most about.
Sure.
But oftentimes, whatever the providers say, they think there's this diagnosis or they want some testing. What they say over and over again, and what we say as well, is you're already doing all the things, regardless of what the cause of this is. The therapies are how he's going to progress.
It's just so frustrating that he's made so little progress. He literally said grandma for the first time like 2 weeks ago.
That's exciting.
And it doesn't that he needed to be grandma, but I mean,
Yeah.
no one can really understand him because his speech is so limited, and very outgoing, happy kid,
Yeah.
but
So
boy, it's frustrating.
there's a couple of different things. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of things going through our head,
Yeah.
but, but But in terms of getting movement and stuff, I mean, at Autism Up, we do run that Exploring Sensations program, and unfortunately, if you don't have self-direction, you can pay out of pocket for it. It is expensive, and I hate to say that, it's that, but you can also apply for a scholarship. And if you're looking for movement or anything, and like I said,
I don't see any significant OT or PT with him, yet they felt that he did because he's still like, the way he does stairs and something about his core strength. He's very little, both of his parents are short. So, I don't know, but I've got all
I'm
sorts of
gonna-
notes in terms of looking at
Yeah.
other resources.
I'm gonna jump in. I think like OTs, like we tend to maybe over push where we go, but a lot of times when kids get the sensory processing regulation, it unlocks some more speech
He's very
development for
sensory,
them.
I think he's sensory seeking.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
and-
So like,
yeah.
I think, right, like if, as hard as it is to wait for OT, hopefully that's kind of like gonna just help bring his
Well,
body.
we know we get it in the fall when he
Yeah.
starts
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
Palisano. And I don't want to take up everybody's
Yeah.
time, I'm
And-
sorry.
and Janet, yeah, and I would encourage you to join the parent group, the
Right.
grandparent
Autism
group,
Up?
yes.
Even though
we-
he's not diagnosed.
No,
Because when they
no.
called us for making the
No.
appointment for the tour, my daughter was like, well, he's not diagnosed, and they said exactly what you said. If he has some delays or some needs, we
No,
don't
and
care.
it doesn't make it, honestly, whether he has a autism diagnosis or not, we're going to work on what the main thing is that we're looking at, regardless of whether you call
Do
it
you guys
autism.
have cards? Or I can go to the parent
Yeah,
to parent.
yeah, go to our.
And I have tried to look for music because he loves music.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing I found was some program in Pittsburgh that was incredibly expensive and always full, and I don't know what else to do other than just doing music with him.
Yeah.
Hochstein has some
Hochstein.
programs.
Sorry?
He's probably out of it.
Oh,
He
he's
probably
3 and a
wouldn't get
half.
into
They have stuff?
Yeah, and,
I'm sorry.
yeah, and we do have we have music and movement groups. Again, I'm not quite sure of the age that it starts with, and unfortunately, if you don't have self-direction, it's out of pocket, but you can get a scholarship. So you just have to fill it out. And I would encourage you to just look and see what we have, because it's a community, and it's not like you're going through it alone.
I had no idea that you could do things without a diagnosis.
Oh, my gosh,
We have one more
absolutely.
question back here.
Yep.
Hey, then, what can parents do to help families get the most out of therapy or eval?
So what can parents do with,
To help the families get the most out of eval or therapy?
To get the most out of an eval?
yeah?
Or therapy.
Or with therapy, yeah. I am a parent of 2 kids. It sounds like we all are parents, and we know how challenging it is to fit in the extra stuff. So, I think most people are trying to give parents advice of like, the next time you are getting your child dressed, can you do this one little thing during that routine, right? It is asking your therapist to provide you with some realistic activities that fit into your daily life, because honestly, spending 10, 15 minutes extra of doing exercise, that's really hard to get out. So as a parent, we want to hear from you about what is hard for you, and that way we can help problem solve in this moment, in this routine. Here's something you could try.
I would also add that as a parent, your therapist should be allowing you the opportunity to practice or play. It should not, at least in the home, it should not be the therapist doing the entire session. It should be the therapist like cueing the parents, yep, you're doing really good with that. Now let's try and move that toy out just a little bit more and see what happens. So that because you're the ones, we're just there for a half hour, and you're the ones that are going to carry over the activity. So it really is, is getting that education from your therapist about how to help your children accomplish whatever activity is specific for that week.
And I would like to add too to that. Again, think about the things you do. You're cooking. Have your child cook with you.
Right.
Take all that stuff. Get messy. Get in the. Get in there. Go outside. Paint. Spray. I mean, do the thing. You're going to take your child out. You're going to do things. If you're cooking and you have to get that done, pop a place up where they do. If it's a little one, put pots and pans up. Have them play. Always just include them. There's always something that you can do. Sing. You know, you're in the car, you're singing a song, and they're filling in a word, you know, so there's always something that doesn't need to be taking that much time, because if you think about it, it's just co-regulating, it's just teaching back and forth, getting that reciprocity. But you have to do it in a fun way, because that's the way learning occurs, is to do it that way, natural.
The other thing I would just add, and this is like a little separate from therapy per se, but especially like if you have an appointment, a doctor's appointment, I really encourage my families and people of all ages, go in with your list of questions and have them written down. Make them visible, because it's your agenda is what's important, and it needs to be. You need the healthcare provider to see that, so that you make sure that everything is listed. I do it for myself, because something gets said and it changes the trajectory of, you know, what you might have gone into an appointment for, and you just want to make sure everything is addressed. And then file information that you get, because it just helps to keep it all in one place.
So we're going to wrap up now. We went a little bit over, but I wanted to tell you all, thank you so much for being here today. You are a wealth of knowledge, and we really appreciate it, and we hope to see people at the next one. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.